We are near the end of 2025, or maybe you're watching this and it's ticked over to 2026. Regardless, it's never too late to focus on what matters to your company. Today, we are zeroing in on a few pressure points that owners often overlook, or maybe they see it, but they don't execute well on it. If you want clear steps, not just theory, you're in the right place. So stick around. By the end, you'll have a 2026 playbook of a few points that you can start using right now. And to do this, I'm joined by Chuck Violand. He's the founder of Violand Management Associates. Chuck, good to have you on.
Jeff, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for asking me.
Absolutely. So, Chuck, I know you've written an article on what we're going to talk about. I can't wait to hear it in your own words because I tell you what's kind of funny is when 26 comes around, there's New Year's resolutions. Do you see something with those that they don't always come true?
Oh, I had some statistics on that from before, and I don't remember what they are, Jeff, but not many actually come to fruition.
So I think it's funny. We all have these resolutions. We make promises. Maybe it's about working out, eating less, whatever. But with business, it's important when you identify something to implement the change that need to happen. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So maybe we can help change a few people's outlook and their plans for 26 with your thoughts. So if you're ready, I'm ready. You
I'm
ready?
ready.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Let's start with an easy one, kind of a fun one. Thinking about 2026, what is a single behavior change that every owner should look at and make? What would you say?
Well, I'm not sure that about behavior change, but I think I can speak to behavior development, at least leadership behavior development. So let's start with this concept, Jeff. Small businesses grow at the rate that their owners or their leaders grow. So if you want to grow your business, start by growing yourself. It's really a pretty basic, simple concept, but it's not easy. So let's break it down and let's go with different size companies. Start with a smaller or a newer company. Let's say a solo operator or somebody with a handful of employees to get started. Most of the training and development items will revolve in companies this size will revolve around the technical elements of the company. Things like becoming good at the actual services they deliver, cleaning, deodorizing, drying. But don't forget other areas of the company, like financial management. This might mean learning not to use the company checkbook as a personal piggy bank, fundamental stuff. Learning to read financial statements, learning to sell the services to their customers, learning how to hire people, what to look for in frontline employees, how to balance workflows with their workforce. And these are all learned skills. Incidentally, these are skills that we've found many new owners who left corporate America to start their business have to learn. And unfortunately, some of them learned the hard way. Now let's advance the company a little bit and let's go to a mid-sized cleaning and restoration company. Maybe this company has half a dozen or a dozen employees. Okay, they're beyond the launch phase. That's the important part. One or two people they've titled managers perhaps in the company, but maybe really they're just relatives or loyal employees who did their job. And so they want to reward them. Well, these owners typically have a pretty good handle on the technical elements of their job, at least the cleaning and restoration pieces. But these owners need to learn how to identify and keep effective managers, as the owner can no longer manage the entire business themselves. They've run out of enough capacity for themselves. This is totally different than managing frontline people. Now, let's go to a larger company. Maybe this company has a couple dozen or even dozens of employees. This owner has an entirely different set of leadership development issues than the solo operator. I'm sure you can see that. So while there's always more work to be done on continuing to develop an owner's technical skills, things like understanding financials, marketing and market trends, new technologies, AI, for goodness sakes, Much of the heavy lifting at this stage really has to do with internal work, the mental and emotional stuff. This is where skills like empathy, communication, collaboration, gaining a greater awareness of one's strengths and weaknesses, understanding how they're perceived by their peers or by the people who report to them, learning to think strategically as well as operationally, learning to coach rather than command. These are the areas that need to be developed or refined in owners at this level of a company.
Those are good thoughts. Hopefully, those reading your article, watching this will go, yep, I need to do that. Yeah. Um, Another point, we have two more. I'm thinking about as business owners look at their companies, what can they do to set up their teams, to empower their employees so that they themselves can own the company and not have it own them? Because I know those watching Chuck are thinking, I'd like to make a turnkey operation, maybe sell it one day, and it can't be Bob's Services or whatever name you want to use. Talk about that if you would.
Yeah, actually, that's a great question, Jeff, and it's one that every business owner has on their mind. Absolutely. So let's go back to the three different size companies that we talked about before, okay, and see how the needs of the people they're hiring at each level changes. Okay, in a smaller company, again, we're going back to the new company or the very small company, many of the first hires are friends or relatives of the owner, or they're people who need jobs. Now, in newer companies, you don't usually attract employees who have grand dreams of climbing a corporate ladder or building management careers in that company. Most are more concerned with basic stuff like making enough money to pay their rent or their mortgage, feed their families, or maybe make enough overtime money to go to a ball game. Although, Jeff, if you've checked the price of tickets at stadiums lately, you've got to work a lot of overtime to pay for that outing, I'll tell you. Now, at this level, an employee's greatest concerns are, will I get paid this week? Will I have a job next year? And do I get along with my boss? So at this level, the owner wants to look for the people who are consistent, reliable, and who do good work. They usually stand out. Now, rather than anointing someone who fits these criteria as a manager too soon, and incidentally, we frequently do that, start with small responsibilities. Maybe a lead tech, maybe a team lead. Perhaps have them run a meeting. Get their input on decisions. Small stuff first. Don't jump too far right off the bat. Both the owner and the employees are learning how to dance together. And there's frequently a lot of collateral damage through this learning process at both this level and the next one that we're going to talk about. Now, the owner also needs to realize that their people are not like them. And this is frequently a difficult lesson for an owner to learn. The people they hire may not be as driven as they are, or even be motivated by the same things that they are. So the owner wants to learn to see things through the employee's eyes. Steve Toburin used to talk about the customer eyeglasses. Well, here you're looking at an employee eyeglasses. And this includes the manner in which the owner is managing the business. So now let's go to the next size company, the one with a dozen employees. This company is in the early stages of having a management team. So the owner has to work on the skills to recognize management talent and how to work with them. Totally different than working with frontline people. Owners should be working on their ability to communicate clearly and often. And this is frequently much more often than the owner is comfortable with. They need to work on their ability to be, as my colleague Scott Tackett would say, firm, fair, and consistent. Now, this not only being firm, fair, and consistent isn't just how they deal with their employees, but it's also being firm, fair, and consistent in how the owner legislates the values of the company. In other words, Do they follow the same set of rules they expect their people to follow? Or do they claim executive privilege every time it becomes inconvenient to do so? This is a basic discipline that many business owners learn the hard way with turnover. So let's not forget about their ability to build the team that will allow them to actually step away from the business. This includes having the discipline to not just settle for hiring marginal people simply because they need a warm body, but rather to look for the right people with the right skills and the right values to build a team around. Now, let's go to the larger company. And this is the one with a few dozen or even many dozen employees. At this stage, Jeff, an owner sometimes has to abandon some of the behaviors that contributed to their success in the company in the early stages, but that no longer serve them now. As a matter of fact, some of them get in the way of their future growth. Things like a command and control mindset, or the need to be seen as the smartest guy in the room. But at this stage, the owner needs to shift from being the one with all the answers to being the one with the best questions. They need to have a curious mind, an inclusive mind. And this takes a lot of internal work on the part of the owner. A lot of that work actually has to do with self-awareness and ego management, both of them critical for a successful leader at this level. Have they built trusting relationships, both professionally and personally, with the people in their organization? Have they created a work environment where people can feel safe and fail without being criticized for it or marginalized for it in their job? Owners at this level need to observe the caliber of questions they get from their people. Are they still getting elementary, basic level questions? If they are, it's usually not because their people aren't smart. It's because the owner hasn't given their people room to ask better questions. They need to learn to listen between the lines and to embrace the diversity of thought and opinions that they need to continue succeeding at this level. Tough lessons for an owner to learn. It's through these kinds of things that owners build loyalty with their people that allows them to actually lead a business rather than having it run them.
Agreed. Good thoughts. Appreciate that, Chuck.
Thank you.
Final point. We're in your world now. You like financials and numbers, right? So let's
I
talk about
do.
that.
I do.
One important item for all business owners and those that they use to look at those numbers and financials is tracking them. And we can't cover every detail here. We're not going to audit any accounts or pretend to do that. But from your viewpoint and your years in the industry, Chuck, what are some big fails that you just consistently see happening? What can we do to spot them to fix them in 26?
Wow, it's another great question. Um, Jeff, I'll tell you, an expression I've found myself using lately is that business is just really a bundle of human behaviors wrapped up in numbers. I'm not even sure what that means, but I know it sure feels that way sometimes. Let's go back to the size companies. For new or smaller companies, this frequently means outsourcing this work, the bookkeeping work, to an experienced bookkeeper or accounting firm. But a word of caution, you want to bring that service, that work, in-house as soon as you can afford to do so for a variety of reasons. Some of them I just touched on earlier. Now, as the size of the company increases, the experience and talent level of the person doing the books also increases as well. Look, money speeds up as your company grows. You want somebody handling the money who is familiar with and comfortable with that increased speed, not somebody who has to get familiar with it on your dime. In larger organizations, you're looking for somebody with an accounting or finance background or a ton of experience with companies comparable in size and service that you provide. Their job is to provide you with timely and accurate financial information and to advise you on that information. Your job is to review the reports and to listen to their counsel. I will tell you that one of the biggest fails I've seen regarding numbers in any small business is the business owner who is trying to do their own books. Jeff, I even have a running joke with a few business owners who are still doing their own books and struggling mightily with it. So I asked them, still doing your own books? Yep, they answer. And so I said, is it getting any better? Nope, they answer. So my first quick fix for 2026 is find a qualified person to do your books for you. This will free you up to do what you should be doing, running your business. Now, you'll notice I said qualified bookkeeper or accountant. This doesn't mean just convenient or cheap. This means trained, experienced, appropriate to the size company you have, and someone who is strong enough to stand toe-to-toe with you as the owner regarding financial disciplines. That's how successful companies are built, and that's a change that's worth making in 2026.